Hello and welcome back to the Football Fellowship podcast. My name is Mevin. And that's it. It's just me. I'm on my ones this week. Toby's not here. He's getting some well-needed rest and recovery while on vacation. Last week, if you're listening or watching, I wasn't here. I was on holiday. Don't worry. It's not going to be something that happens too often. It's just the way that our schedules aligned. Next week, it'll be Toby and me in the usual location, not just me in my bedroom. But you're probably wondering, what am I going to talk about? There's been no Premier League fixtures over the weekend because it's been International Week, which happens so early on the season. It's a bit frustrating for players, clubs, and fans like ourselves. But instead of talking about internationals, I'm going to be talking about the Premier League fixtures upcoming. I'm talking about Gameweek 5, previewing them, and going through all 10 fixtures. And let's get into it. I'm going to start off with Wolves versus Liverpool, which is the Saturday 12:30 kickoff. And in the last 5 meetings, Liverpool have won the last 4. There have been no draws, and Wolves have won once. In the actual last fixture that the two teams played against each other, Wolves won 3-0 at the Molineux, which was a drubbing for Liverpool. Fantastic result for Wolves. And it's one where, going into the season, Liverpool have amassed so far 10 points, which have done really well. Wolves, on the other hand, are 15th after 4 games, getting 4 points. And to be fair, they should have got a point against Manchester United as well, so I'm not going to take that against them. But Wolves have done okay so far, I think the fact that they, sacked the manager, brought in Gary O'Neill, and it was a bit of a shock when it happened. I mean, the fact that you let go of Lopetegui is a manager who's done extremely well, great pedigree, great CV. But then I think it was probably the right thing to do that the club and him part ways and bring in Gary O'Neill, who I think really revitalised the club and the players and put them together in one common direction, because clearly Lopetegui and the board or the owner were having issues. And I think they've done all right so far this season. But I think they are going to struggle against Liverpool, even though they have put in some impressive performances. Because I'm not sure they're going to be able to handle the quality of Liverpool's front three. And I think with Liverpool, it's been that front three which has really got them out of tight situations so far this season, because the defence really hasn't been doing it. Like, I expect Matip and Gomez to start at centre-back again this week, because Virgil van Dijk obviously got suspended when he got sent off against Newcastle, but then he got an additional one-match ban for abusing the ref, I think is the best way of putting it, because to be fair, it was very poor from him, and he got an extended watchman ban. Could have been more, so you shouldn't argue too much. But I definitely think Matip and Gomez, it's a partnership that got a clean sheet against Aston Villa in the last home game before the international break, but I do feel like it is there to be got at if you do try. I do think for Liverpool that Szoboszlai, Endo and Alexis McAllister are going to be the midfield 3. We did see in the last game that Curtis Jones started on the left-hand side of the 3, and Alexis McAllister started as a defensive midfielder. However, I do feel like Liverpool need to start Wataru Endo and play him really consistently, because at the moment he's the most defensive-minded midfielder the club have, and you could argue for Stefan Bajcetic, but obviously he's still a youngster, he's 18, he's just come back from injury issues, although he did really, really well before that happened. I think it's one where Endo's going to be the defensive midfielder in the short term, definitely for the season at least, until, maybe an Andre comes in January or someone like that, who the club have been linked with. But in the front 3, I think Núñez is one where, do you include him or do you not? Because against Aston Villa at home, it's an alright time to play him, because he's at home, you've got the crowd to support him. Away from home, where the team's going to be defending deep, I suspect that's going to be the game plan for Wolves, and to counter-attack, I don't think he's the best back-to-goal striker. I think he's better when he's got space in behind. He can run into those long balls from the midfield or Trent Alexander-Arnold, and then when he's got that space and he can have a quick finish, when he's got his back to goal and he's got to link up the play between the different players, is he the best striker for that situation? And if you take in the fact that Liverpool have got the Europa League to focus on now on Thursday nights, coming up against Lask, who play in the Austrian League, they're going to be flying away on Thursday. Is it the right game for him? Is maybe there a better shot for maybe a Diogo Jota or a Cody Gakpo? I definitely think you can make those arguments, I don't think it's said that Nunes is going to play. I think it's hard to drop him based on his performance off the bench against Newcastle. And then when he started against Aston Villa, he didn't get a goal, but he got the assist for Medicash's own goal. And then he could have had one where the ball came in from the right and he kind of went to kick it, where he should have tried to head it, and he just went wide of the post. But I think for Wolves, I think their left-hand side is going to be, really where they can get some joy, whether it be Hwang or Neto or on the left-hand side. I think going at that space that Trent Alexander-Arnold will leave if he's fit after, of course, that I think will be the key issue where Wolves can try and exploit. I think if Ryan Nouri plays at left back, or even if it's Bueno, because maybe you want to go a bit more defensively, but I think playing Ryan Nouri, I think he's got the skills and the experience to maybe do a job against Mo Salah if he's lucky, because to be fair, to be a fullback against Salah, you have to be a bit lucky. But I think offensively, they could really hurt Liverpool down their right-hand side and Wolves' left. So I think that's one option. And I think one of the other options is when Wolves are going to be sitting back deep and counter-attacking, what are the likes of who you're going to choose in those wide areas? Are you going to choose Neto, Hwang, or are you going to use Pablo Sarabia? And I would actually go for Neto on the right and Hwang on the left. And I know Neto is probably arguably better on the left-hand side, but we have seen him play on the right. Lopetegui played him a lot on the right last season, even though he's probably prefers playing on the left. But I think you need to find a way for Hwang to get in the side, because so far this season, I think he's actually been a real great attacking output on the left-hand side and threat, getting into goal-scoring positions. And I think obviously for Matheus Cunha and Fabio Silva have to play up top. I think maybe Klasic is one to bring off the bench if Wolves need a goal late on. But I really do think that, Silva, he's been a bit unlucky because he's in the 214 minutes he's played so far this season. He's got no goals and no assists. However, his XG is 1, so he's due a goal, he's underperforming, and he's created 9 shot-creating actions. So he is getting in and around the box, and he's getting himself in good positions. He just needs to get the finish away. And I think that defence of Matip and Gomez, the centre-back pairing, and with Endo or Alexis McAllister or Bajcetic Jones, whoever plays in the defensive midfield, there is a midfield and a defence, a core of Liverpool's defence that's there to be gone at. And I think Wolves should be looking to exploit that. In my opinion, I do think, though, that this game is going to go either one or two ways. I think both options are going to be a Liverpool win. Sorry, Wolves fans. I think that either it's going to be a close encounter and Liverpool just edge it, or Liverpool are going to turn up to Molineux and absolutely smash Wolves. I think it's actually going to be a bit close because I think post-international break, I think the players have gone away, a lot of Liverpool players, and I think they're going to be a bit rusty. So I think that gives Wolves a chance and Gary O'Neill to work with the players who are still there. So I'm going to go final score, Wolves 1, Liverpool 2. That's going to be a prediction. I think Liverpool will concede. I think definitely Wolves will concede. But I do think that Liverpool's firepower, like I said, whoever it is, Nunes, Salah, Diaz, Jota, Gakpo, whoever it is, I think they're going to turn up. So I'm going to go Wolves 1, Liverpool 2. And then moving on to our second game week, the first of the Saturday 3pms, is Aston Villa versus Crystal Palace. And Aston Villa are in 10th place at the moment, 2 wins, 6 points, also having 2 losses. I think it's one where a lot of people maybe expected Aston Villa to do better than they have. But if you look at the games that they've lost, Newcastle away, first game of the season, 5-1 thumping, and Liverpool away, 3-0 just before the international break. I think it's one where I think it's okay to lose to Newcastle away and Liverpool away. That's perfectly fine. The issue comes in the performances and the scoreline. Because I think the scoreline in those cases is reflective of the performances. I think Aston Villa, they're a team who are now in the Europa Conference League. They've got the second most points in the league behind Man City ever since Unai Emery took over, even beating Arsenal. So it's one where people expect a lot from them. So I think it's fine that they haven't necessarily set the world alight, but I do think people expect at least better performances from them, which has been a bit disappointing. But one team which has really impressed me has been Crystal Palace. They are at the moment in 7th place, having 2 wins, 1 draw and 1 loss. And I think it's one where Roy Hodgson has to take a lot of credit. Ever since he's come back into the side, he's really impressed in the way that he's managed them. He's getting the team to take a lot of shots. Just for example, Edson Odward, 4 matches played, 3 goals, no assists. But he is taking, he has had 19 shots in this 4 games and 13 shot creating actions. And I think he's been incredibly impressive of how he set up the team, because I don't think Edson Edward has set the world alight since he's come back, since he joined Crystal Palace from Celtic. I think there was a lot of hype initially when he joined. This could be a striker to elevate Palace and, the one they really need after a string of strikers who hasn't worked out. But I do believe that, I think in this Crystal Palace side, it is made for him. I think one thing I really like is the fact that it's been the same team for all 4 games so far this season, and you don't even need to really look at the line. You know who's going to start. I mean, likely it's going to be Sam Johnson, Joe Ward, Anderson, Gahey, Mitchell, Decore, Lerma, Ayew, Eze, Slup, and Alton Edward up front. And I think there's maybe a few question marks around Sam Johnston with Gene Henderson coming into the side. And I think with Jordan Ayew playing on the right at the moment, he's done fantastically well. But eventually you would expect that Michael Elisa will come back into the side and take over his place. But it's one where I'm really, really impressed by Palace. 69 shots so far in 4 games. Only scored 5 goals. But from next year 5.8, they're probably doing as they are. But they're not a side who's going to be free scoring, So the fact that they're taking 7 shots, they need to really. And it's good on Roy Hodgson to recognise that they need to be taking lots of shots because they've got a low conversion rate. So therefore just have shots. And that's exactly what they've been doing. I think for Aston Villa, I'm not sure if they're going to play with a 4 or a 3. If I to put money on it, I'd probably say they're going to play with a 4 at the back. Just because of the injuries they've had to Tyrone Mings. I know Douglas Luiz came off with a knock in the last game just before the international break, but I do think he probably will be fine. But I don't think with the Conference League coming up as well, you really want to be risking him. So I think it's one where they're going to play the 4 at the back. There's going to be Martinez, Cash, Konza, Pau Torres, Luca Digne. I mean, if you really wanted to, you could play... You could play Carlos at centre-back instead of Pau Torres. I think Pau Torres has struggled because defensively he hasn't been great so far. I think he will come good. But he's more of a better player when the team are ball-dominant, they have the possession, and he's looking to make progressive passes. That's when he really his strengths really show. But I think he struggled, but I think he will come good. In the midfield, I've got Douglas Luiz, Boubacar Kamara. And I think that they should play a 3 behind Watkins of Leon Bailey, Moussa Diaby and John McGinn behind Ollie Watkins. And I think the one area for Crystal Palace which is the weakest is the right back area. And I know it's Joe Ward who's been a club legend for his service to the club. But I think the fact that, Aston Villa have pace in their team, and if they really wanted to, they could really target Joe Ward and cause a nightmare for him. I mean, I know Mr. Diaby's been playing on the right or in the middle behind Watkins, but if you wanted to play him on the left or Leon Bailey instead of John McGinn and move him to the middle or the right, I think that could be one where, that small tactical setup could change, how effective Aston Villa's attack is against Crystal Palace and really require Jordan Ayew to go back and really help out Joe Ward, and then that nullifies that right-hand side. And, there's a lot of emphasis then on a Berezi essay to do a lot of the creative stuff, which there is anyway, but make it so that he has to do it and really push the Crystal Palace back. I think it's one where in the last game, which was at Villa, was Villa 1, Palace 0. I think it's actually going to be a repeat of that. I think it's going to be Aston Villa 1, Crystal Palace 0 again. I do just think that despite Villa's away performances so far this season against Liverpool and against Newcastle, that at home, I think they will be the more dominant team, and I think they will nullify Crystal Palace. So that's going to be a prediction. Villa 1, Crystal Palace 0. And then to the second of our 3 p.m. kickoffs on the Saturday, we got Fulham versus Luton Town. Fulham are at the moment in 13th place, 4 games gone, 1 win, 1 draw, and 2 losses. And Luton, of course, 3 games, 3 losses. 19th, and they're only 19th on goal difference because they've got -7 and Burnley have got -8. Obviously for Fulham and Marco Silva's men, I think it's a good thing the transfer window is now over. They're not going to lose any more players. The whole Alexander Mitrovic situation is sorted out now. I think the fact that it's sad for the player in Paulinho, but the fact that he didn't end up getting his move to Bayern Munich is going to be so crucial to the way they play and the way the success of the club this season. I think they really struggled without him against Manchester City. Obviously, if you lose to Man City, it's fine. It happens. everyone will likely lose to Man City. But the thing is, to have Palhinha back in the side, that really solidifies the team in the midfield, and especially against the Luton Town. They probably could be fine without him, but I think Luton now have a run of fixtures in which the next 4 or 5 before the October international break is a really big chance for them to get some points. Because if you look at it, it's Fulham away, Wolves at home, Everton away, Burnley at home, and Spurs at home. And obviously the Spurs game is going to be tough, but they are at home, and all the other 4 fixtures against sides who are in the bottom half of the Premier League. So I really do think that, Luton have to be getting maybe 6 points from the next 5 games in order for them to have any chance of staying in the league. And I think that's to prove to rival opposition that we can get points, but also to prove to themselves that, we do belong in this league, we deserve to be here. I mean, even though we came through the playoff, we shall earn the right to play in the Premier League, and I think they need to prove that to themselves as well. It would be 6 points from 8 games if they do that, and, that's on the lower side. They probably would still be in the relegation zone, you'd imagine, or nearabouts. But I think that's a realistic total for them. And even if it's 3 draws and 1 win, and maybe they just stop losing the losing streak, but I think this is a great chance for them. But they have to get past this Fulham side, like I said, with Palhinha. They will be much better. And I think for now, Fulham, they should try and get a settled defence as well, because obviously they had Tim Ream sent off in the game against Brentford. So then they had played Calvin Bassey away to Arsenal, but then he got sent off, and then Tim Ream came back in the side. But I think it's now where, Marcus can now choose a settled back 5 with Palhinha in front of it and really go, this is my team, we're going to stick to this for now. And hopefully, barring injuries and maybe further suspensions, you never know, that the team shouldn't change too much. I would actually go with Leno, Tete, Diop, Ream, Robinson in the midfield, Reed, Palhinha and Pereira, and front 3 of Wilson, Jimenez and Willian. And there are, in that front line, you could really change all 3 of them. You could play Adama Traore, you could play Bobby Decordova Reed, you could even play Carlos Vinicius, who hasn't really got a look in at all. And it's been Raul Jimenez who started all 4 games for Fulham so far this season. And I think it's one where maybe Marcus is trying to play Jimenez into form because he believes there is something in him. And I think we'd all like to see it, considering how the horrific injury he's had. Everyone's talked about it for enough time. We all know about it. But we'd all like to see him break his goal drought, score some goals for Fulham, and, do well for them. But I think Carlos Vinicius, it gets to a point where he needs to get a chance as well, because he did alright when Mitrovic was suspended, when he got sent off against Man United in the FA Cup. He led the line really well, and there wasn't too much of a drop-off, maybe in all-round linker play, but he did get the goals and assists, so I think eventually he's going to have to get some time as well. But I think it's one for me where I think it's going to be a draw. I do think it's going to be a draw. I don't think either side can keep much of a defence. There are questions for Luton as well, because Tim Krul's obviously come in. Do you play with him in goal? I would probably stay with Kaminsky for now. Do you play with Doughty at right wing back? Because, obviously he came off in the last game. Do you go back to Kabore? If he's fit, I think I would. Which 3 centre-backs do you choose? I mean, none of them have been really impressive. I would personally go for Burke, Anderson and Bell. I would bench Tommy Lockyer. And I play Ryan Giles at left wing-back. And then midfield 3, I think I'd go Chong, Kamara and Barkley, who I think have done really well together. And I'd go Morris and Adebayo up top. And I think it's one where Morris is going to be huge for them. I think he's got to start scoring, and I think he will. So I think he's going to, I think he's going to bag a brace against Fulham. If you play FPL, then that's my prediction for you. If you trust me or not, that's up to you. But don't come back to me if it doesn't work. I think it's going to be Fulham 2, Luton Town 2, and I think it's going to be Luton Town's first points of the season. And then next up, we have Manchester United versus Brighton and Hove Albion. And this is a really, really interesting fixture. It's a shame it's not televised in the UK, because I think this is one where it could be very, very spicy to watch. Obviously, we've got to talk about Man United, and unfortunately, it's going to be off the field, because I've never known a team to have a worse month PR-wise than that Manchester United have in the recent last month or so. From the whole Mason Greenwood situation, from how they've handled it to how the move has come about, from the fallout of the game against Arsenal and Eric Ten Hag falling out with Jadon Sancho publicly, very publicly. Anthony with his allegations around his suspected conduct off the pitch. I think it's been an absolute nightmare, and I do not envy Erik ten Hag at this moment in time. I think that he could have handled maybe the Jadon Sancho situation a bit better, but we're living in this world where we want players to speak up and have a voice. That I think if he feels like he's in the right, then he should come up and speak up about it. So I'm not going to criticize Sancho for it. I don't know the full story. Maybe we'll know the full story in the wellness of time, but it does leave them short in attacking options, regardless of what you think. And if you add that to the injuries that Manchester United have as well, Rafael Varane, Luke Shaw, Tariq Malacia, Mason Mount, Amad Diallo, Kubi Mano, this could really derail the top 4 chances if they don't get another win. Because at the moment, Manchester United are 11th. They've got 6 points, 2 wins and 2 losses. You would expect them to do better with the fixtures they've had as well. Even then, the wins they've had, Wolves at home, Nottingham Forest at home, has not been convincing. But I think it doesn't matter if the performance is convincing or not. Getting the points on the board is all that matters at any stage of the season. Thankfully, they've got 6. But compare that to Brighton, who've in 6th place at the moment, 9 points, 3 wins and 1 loss. Obviously, that loss being to West Ham. But they've really, really impressed. And I think it's one where Brighton aren't going to finish 6th like they did last year. I think it's one where Brighton's season starts now. You've got your fixtures are going to come every weekend, and you've got the Europa League as well to focus on midweek. I mean, if you talk about Brighton's group in the Europa League, Ajax, Marseille, and AEK Athens, that is a tough group. And to be honest, I do think that Brighton will get through the group. But to say that, maybe they're guaranteed to get through it is definitely not true. They're going to really, really struggle. So I think this is going to be a fantastic game. And actually, if you look at the last 5 fixtures between these two clubs, Man United have won just once. Just once. They've drawn once, which was in the FA Cup just last season, in which Man United won on pens. And then Brighton have won 3 of the last 5 encounters. So this is one where, maybe if you're a betting man, you're tipping Brighton more than you are Man United. I mean, the Man United lineup, I think Onana's definitely going to be in goal. I think that back 4 is not looking great. I think it's going to be Aaron Wan-Bissaka, Victor Lindelof. If Martinez is fit, I think you have to play him because the thought of Maguire and Lindelof, or maybe, I don't even know, Johnny Evans and Lindelof is not an appealing one. So I think Martinez and Lindelof have to play. I think Diego Dallo has to carry on a left back because with no fit left backs at the moment, what choice do you have? I don't think Sergio Reguilon is ready at the moment in time. I think he's going to be more of a bench option with 5 subs to be coming on to relieve one of the fullbacks when in maybe the 60th, 70th minute. I think midfield, I think there is the option of playing Bruno Fernandes out on the right-hand side. However, I don't think that's the best option with no Mason Mount in the team at the moment either because of his injury. That I think you get rid of your most creative player and, the player with the most attacking output in the last few seasons, bar Marcus Rashford. So I would play Casemiro, Eriksen, Bruno in midfield, and I would play Garnacho, Højlund, and Rashford as a front 3. And, Garnacho is better on the left than he is on the right. But if you think about the other options, Bruno out on the right, I just said I don't think that's the best idea. And then Amad Diallo is injured, so it could be Pellistri. And I think maybe Pellistri, you ease him into that side. I mean, there's a lot of pressure, a lot of people saying go with Pellistri from the off. Ease him into it, bring him off the bench, let him show what he's capable of, give him moments of promise. And really give it to Garnacho to be like, okay, you're not just going to take that spot. I'm going to, force my way into this team. So what we've seen from Garnacho, he's an extremely exciting player, but he is better off the bench from what we've seen. So he needs, game time to establish himself as a regular starter. And, when you do have injuries and suspensions and off-field issues, for whatever reason, when a player is not available in the position, the player underneath him has to prove that, that player isn't going to go straight back into the team. And so if the allegations against Anthony are false and he's going to come back into the team, or maybe Jadon Sancho miraculously, gets on the same page as Erik ten Hag, he's going to come back. Garnacho needs to have the opportunity to just go, no, you don't deserve it. I'm going to take the chance. So that's the team I'll go for. I think obviously Højlund up front, I think it would be incredibly exciting. He had a lovely spell up against Arsenal when he did come on in the last 20 minutes. So it'd be lovely to see him play. I think this player's got a lot of hype and he's got a lot of potential. And I think we're just about ready to see it now. For Brighton, it's interesting. I think the team more or less picked itself, I think Verbruggen is going to start off in goal. I would play Joel Veltman at right back because I think against the pace of Marcus Rashford, if you play James Milner there, I think he's going to struggle. Maybe there's a shout for Tariq Lamptey, but De Zerbi shown he doesn't really fancy him. I think it's one player who definitely needs to be looking for a move at some point. But I think Joel Veltman would do. I'm going to go with centre-back partnership of Adam Webster and Lewis Dunk. I know Van Heck came in the last game, did really well against Newcastle, but I think against Hoyland, he was pace power. You need, Dunk's got power, Webster got power and a tiny bit of pace. But I think that together they can use their experience. One will mark him, one will drop off, and I think that'll be how they handle him. At left back, Estepinian, of course. In the midfield, I think Billy Gilmore and Pascal Gross, that seems to be the midfield two. That seems to be the one that De Zerbi fancies. I think Dahoud might come in the Europa League. He hasn't seemed to acclimatise to the Premier League just yet. I'm going to play a three of Matoma on the left, Solly Marsh on the right, and I'm going to play João Pedro just behind Evan Ferguson. And I think those two positions, the number 9 and the one behind him, are the ones where you can really debate about, because you could argue that Danny Welbeck should be starting up front. He had a fantastic performance against Old Trafford last time Brighton played there. But I just think that on the back of a hat-trick and all the hype he's having, you can't drop Evan Ferguson at this moment in time. I think it'd be really unfair to score a hat-trick and then get dropped the next week. And then with Europa League as well, Danny Welbeck, could play in the Europa League, no problems asked. And I think João Pedro just behind Evan Ferguson, just because I think when it was Welbeck and Ferguson, it didn't quite work. The chemistry wasn't there. The defensive side wasn't there. And they ended up losing that game to West Ham, even though they're more possession. So I'm going to go, that's my team for Brighton. And I'm going to go with another 2-2. I don't think either team are really much. I think Brighton are the better footballing team at this moment in time. But I think Man United, with the players they have, they can blow anyone out the water. So I don't think either side are going to be keeping clean sheets either, with the attacking talent on show. So I'm going to go 2-2, and I think it's going to be one where both teams can take a point and go on to the European fixtures. Next up, we have Tottenham Hotspurs versus Sheffield United, and Tottenham Hotspurs, who is everyone's flavour of the month at the moment. Ange Ball has well and truly taken over at White Hart Lane. It appears that everyone's talking about Tottenham, how exciting they are to watch, how attacking their play is, and what a joy it has been, and what a nice change, a refreshing change from the Mourinho, the Conte, and the style of football that it was. But I do think that defensively they are extremely suspect, and that's nothing new. Everyone knows that they'll be conceding lots of goals. But I think there could be something to get at for Sheffield United here, because as Toby likes to talk about Sheffield United and their wing backs being incredibly inverted and not leaving space out wide and really crowding the box in the middle of the pitch so that no team can really get chances off against them. And we saw this when they were playing at home to Man City, when they only just narrowly lost out 2-1. So I think it's one where Spurs might struggle in this game a bit. The way they're going to really do well is because Sheffield United are going to, at some point, going to throw bodies forward, and I think Spurs are going to pick them off on the counter-attack. However, for large parts of this game, I think they're going to frustrate Spurs. And this is a bit of a hot take, maybe because of the way the Spurs have been playing at the moment, but I just think with the international break having probably come at the wrong time for Spurs, and then Paul Heckingbottom having time to analyse how Spurs play, I think it's going to be one where, Sheffield United are really going to come out and give a good account of themselves. I would actually, this is going to be controversial, I would start Richarlison up front, and I would move Son back out to the left-hand side. And after getting a hat-trick, you might be saying, this is crazy, this is wild, but from what we've seen of Heung-min Son up front, he likes it when he has space in behind to run into. And when he was playing, it was a 2 up top with Harry Kane at points last season before. He had plenty of that. Harry Kane would drop in deep and he would play the ball over the top to Heung-min Son. Now, against a Sheffield United side who I expect are going to be defending really deep, really compact, back to goal, how effective is he going to be? I'm not sure he's going to be that effective. And again, this might come back to bite me, but I just think play Richarlison, even though he's not an amazing goal threat, and we know his poor goal scoring record, but I think with his back to goal, he's a better striker and he can link up the play between the wingers and Maddison, so then he can actually help create more and he can actually be more effective, if that makes sense. So, I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of Richarlison, but I just think that there is something to be had for playing Richarlison in this game, because I think Ange, he'll realise that, you can't, Son maybe isn't used to playing up front, and there are going to be times where, you need a player like Richarlison. So I don't think he's completely useless at this moment in time. And I know that's a bit harsh because I would drop Mano Sullivan. He got 2 assists in the last game against Burnley. But I think just with Burnley, the way they play, they look really naive, and they have been so far this season so far. They've been pressing really high, leaving lots of space, and I think it was easy for them to pick them off. So I would actually go back to the way they've been playing in the last few games. Richarlison up front, Son on the left, Kulusevski on the right. And obviously, I think the rest of the team picked itself. Vicario in goal, Pedro Porro at right back, Romero, Mickey van der Ven, Udoji, and midfield 2 of Basuma and Sarr behind Madison. But I think that's something that's going to be really interesting to see. And if you're listening, I think it's a great idea and one you should recommend. For Sheffield United, obviously they're in 17th place, just outside the relegation zone. 3 losses, 1 draw. I don't know what to say about Sheffield United. I think the fact that they signed Archer has been a really big plus because he looked really, really promising in their last game against Everton. He got the goal, of course, and I think it's one where going forward he's going to be really crucial for them in the way they play. I think maybe, the team maybe picked itself and they should carry on what they've been doing in the last few games. I think Foderingham in goal, Baldock, Ahmedzovic, John Egan, Jack Robinson, and Larouci at left wing back, Vinicius Susan, Ollie Norwood, and Gustavo Hamer in midfield, with Archer and McBurney up top. I think Archer coming in, I can't believe Aston Villa let him go. They did get a decent price for him, to be fair, but I just think with him and McBurney up top, McBurney's had experience of playing in the Premier League, that together they can maybe cause something. I do think Spurs will have too much firepower, but I think they are leaky defensively, and the game against Arsenal in 2 weeks' time will be really interesting to watch, see what they do against a really high quality team who are really good at pressing and winning the ball back, how they do in transition then. But I'm going to go with Spurs 4, Sheffield United 2. That's the most goals I'm predicting this week, so yeah, hopefully that comes off. But I just think, that Richarlison's shout. Let me know what you think. Do you think that's a good idea, or do you think I've lost my mind? And then the next game is West Ham United versus Manchester City. And it's a bit boring because I do think the Man City are going to win this game. I think they're the much better side. That's very obvious. But I think Spurs do have enough in them to hurt them, as we saw that against Chelsea. We saw that against Brighton. And I think that, don't count out West Ham just yet. The issue, similar to Brighton, is that Europe is going to be starting up. And obviously, Mikel Antonio at some point is going to have to be rested. And that's a big one because they sold Gianluca Scamacca to Inter Milan, and they didn't necessarily replace him. So off the bench, you've really got Danny Ings to play up front. And I think, no disrespect to Danny Ings, but he's not the quality of striker or the caliber you need coming off the bench. So I think that Manchester City are going to win, and I think they might end up winning comfortably, despite what I've just said. Because I think Jared Bowen on the right, I think Ben Rama on the left, but Antonio up top. I just think, yes, they're good, and against most other teams in the league, they will do a number. But I just think against this Man City side, what's the point at times, I do think maybe they'll have something in them. I do think that the fact that they can continue playing Erling Haaland and Julian Alvarez up top together, I think at some point, Alvarez has got to come out of the side. And you've seen the record of when Haaland and Alvarez are playing together. It's been really, really good. But I just think, I'm just trying to find ways for people to stop this Man City side. And the moment I'm struggling, and I don't think West Ham at this moment in time have the answers. The only bit of hope is that it's been the national break, similar to Liverpool for Wolves, that, a lot of the players have been flying out of the country and, playing all games. So maybe they'll come back a bit more fatigued than the West Ham players, and maybe David Moyes' masterclass. But I just think, maybe at home they have a chance, but I'm only going to give them 1 goal. I think it's going to be 3-1 to Manchester City. I've got Edison playing in goal, Walker at right back, Diaz, Akanji and Ake. I don't think that Gavardio is necessarily going to start this game, but I think Gavardio may start midweek in the Champions League. I think it's going to be Rodri and Kovacic in midfield too, as they have been all season so far. I think on the right, it's going to be Bernardo Silva. On the left, it's going to be Jack Grealish over Phil Foden. And I think Alvarez and Haaland are going to start up top. For West Ham, I have actually got Areola in goal, Kufal, Kurt Zouma, Aguirre and Emerson at the back. But the midfield is what I've got interesting, because I'm trying to think of ways David Moyes can try and neutralise the Manchester City to the best of his abilities. So I've got them playing Edson Alvarez, Souček and James Ward-Prowse in the midfield. And I've got Lucas Paqueta out on the left. bit controversial again, but I just think if you're going to be trying to defend against this Manchester City side, there needs to be, that midfield is really areas where you're going to win or lose it. And I think Edson Alvarez has been amazing. I think James Ward-Prowse with the set pieces and the general play would really come in handy, so you can't leave him at the side. And I just think Souček, with his late runs in the box, is a real goal threat. I think Lucas Paqueta could play there. Defensively, I'm not quite sure of him. So I've pushed him out to the left wing, and maybe you could play Ben Rama there instead. I've got Jarrod Bowen on the right and Antonio in front. But I do think West Ham are going to lose. I think Man City are going to win 3-1, like I've said. But, you've got to live in hope. And then moving on to the Saturday 5:30 kickoff, we've got Newcastle United versus Brentford. Newcastle, who are at the moment in 14th place, 3 points, 3 losses, 1 win. And Brentford, who are in 8th place with 6 points, 1 win, 3 draws, and who are currently unbeaten in the Premier League. And I think we'll start with Newcastle because it has been underwhelming so far this season, yes. But I think you've got to take into account the difficulty of the fixtures they've had so far. I think when you play, you've got to play Liverpool, Manchester City, Aston Villa and Brighton. I think that is an incredibly difficult start of the year. And I think one that Newcastle fans will be hoping for a bit better for, and I don't blame them, because to have that, and then also to have the group of death in the Champions League, to have PSG, Borussia Dortmund and AC Milan, and then in the League Cup to get Manchester City, they have had no luck with fixtures so far this season. And it's one where a lot of rival fans are actually the ones who are, saying, they're under a bit of pressure. I think they need to watch out. But really, I think Newcastle fans don't need to worry whatsoever. Just, your team, your club, and the fixtures you've had. So, no one else is going to take it. Just fight your corner. You're going to be fine. But I do think there's pressure, again, externally for Eddie Howe, because at some point you need to show that you can compete against the big boys. And maybe it doesn't have to be this season. You could be all right without Champions League football. But at some point, you need to start winning games against the bigger teams. And they have an opportunity to really put down a marker before they play AC Milan this weekend, because Brentford, like I said, are unbeaten so far in the league. They played really well. But despite the fact that they have had no Ivan Toney as well, I mean, playing with a 5 at the back against Spurs and then playing with 4 at the back in the other 3 fixtures, they've done really well. Brian Mbeumo has really impressed. Wissa, Kevin Schade. The midfield 3 is completely robust and you can get through. But then they have so much depth at fullback and centre back as well. Just look at the centre back options they have. They've got Pinnock, Collins, me, and Christophe Ayer. So they've got a lot of options in a lot of areas. And Mark Flecken's coming in really well. I would say, though, the only question mark around Brentford is if they want to be a team that's challenging for Europe, which they missed out just ever so slightly last year, then they need to be converting draws against Crystal Palace and Bournemouth into wins. That's the only criticism I have of them. And maybe that'll change when they have a prolific striker up front, such as Ivan Toney when he's back in January. But at the moment, they're doing all right. I think perfectly fine. 8 points in the league, 8th in the league, 6 points so far. I don't think Brentford fans will be complaining. So I've got Pope for Newcastle, Pope, Trippier, Shaw, Lascelles, Dan Burn. I'll come on to Lascelles in a second. Tonali, Bruno and Joe Linton in the midfield, and Almiron, Isak and Gordon up front. And I think why it has to be Jamal Lascelles is because we saw Matt Targett play in the last game with Dan Burn at centre-back, and he had a bit of a torrid time, and so Matt Targett ended up coming off. Dan Burn ended up moving to left back, and Jamal Lascelles went into centre back. And I think it's an area which they have left themselves short at centre back. With Sven Botman's injury, that's a massive, massive blow. Their best centre back and out for who knows how long, maybe a couple of weeks at the most, with his ankle injury. But then to actually think about it in the way, by moving Burn from left back to centre back, you're actually changing 2 positions, because the chemistry, if you think about FIFA with the green lines, that you're moving the left back to centre back and bringing a new player left back. You're changing how the centre back partnership is, and you're changing the how the chemistry between the centre back and the left back to the left winger, and the left back to the left centre midfielder in Joe Linton. So that's all, the whole left hand side you're changing in effect, if that makes sense. So I think Lascelles has to come into the team at some point, because obviously he's clearly not first choice, and maybe he's hoping for a move away from the club. But I think with Newcastle being short of centre back, you have to play someone. I think Lascelles over Target at the moment, and if that doesn't work out against Brentford, then maybe you can bring Matt Target back in against AC Milan. Who knows? But I think it's an area where we are going to struggle, and injury is going to be Newcastle's Achilles heel this season. For Brentford, I think the team picks itself really, apart from maybe the centre back. So I've gone Flecken and goal, Hickey. I've gone with Collins, partnering Pinnock, with Rico Henry and left back, Jensen, Norgard, and Jan out in midfield. Brian and Bemo on the right, Wisa up front, and Shard on the left. And I think, really, like I said, the team picks itself. I think Newcastle need to win more than Brentford do, and I think they really need to respond. So I'm going to go for Newcastle 3, Brentford 1. And now we move on to the Sunday's fixtures. We have Bournemouth versus Chelsea, the Sunday 2 p.m. fixture. And neither of these teams has had a particularly great start to the season. Both have done a lot of business in the transfer window. Chelsea obviously more notably, but Bournemouth by bringing in Iraola, getting rid of Gary O'Neill, who we mentioned for Wolves, and then spending a lot of money as they have for Bournemouth. So the fact that Bournemouth are 16th at the moment, 2 draws, 2 losses, 2 points. I think the narrative, like it has been for a couple of teams, they've had difficult fixtures. Chelsea, on the other hand, are 12th, 1 win, 1 draw, 2 losses, 4 points at the moment. And I think they'll be slightly more disappointed than Bournemouth are because of the fact that, they had games in which they could have won. They played really well against Liverpool, didn't late goal against Nottingham Forest. It's unfortunate, but it's the way football is sometimes. And, they've got to be a bit more clinical up front. I think Nicholas Jackson has, he's done everything apart from score goals, and he looked really good. So in his 4 matches played, 1 goal, no assists. He's got an XG of 3. So he's really underperforming at this moment in time. He really needs to buckle up his ideas. The issue for Chelsea is obviously they've got no one else. But at 22 years old, you may as well put your hope in Jackson and hope he comes good, because I think he would, because he's showing everything else. I mean, he's created 16 shot creating actions, so not only just scoring, but he's getting in the right areas, helping out his teammates. So I think it's one where, given time, eventually he will come good. Also for Chelsea, the fact that Reece James may eventually be back. He put out a post on his socials saying coming back to training soon. So, maybe Malo Gusto will end up coming out the side, even though I think he's done really well. But there is one criticism of Chelsea, and that's I've seen online, and that's from them playing a back 3. So people are saying that Chilwell should not be playing left wing, and Levi Colwill is essentially playing left back, and then maybe just go to a more conventional 4 at the back with Chilwell at left back, maybe with Thiago Silva partnering one of Disasi or Levi Colwill, and then playing out on right back, and that really helped the chemistry of the team. And I can understand that, but I think the reason why Mauricio Pochettino decided to play with that 3 at the back, but with Chilwell at left wing essentially, is because of the fact that of Carney Chukwuemeka's injury, the fact that you've got Christopher Nkunku. It's just the fact that you don't have the right type of player for the way he wants to play at the moment. And sure, and I think there's something to be said for trying something different. Like, Sterling's done amazingly well, but could you maybe play Mudryk on the other side, or maybe move Sterling to the left-hand side and bring in Noni Madueke? You've obviously now signed Cole Palmer as well, so at some point he's going to be starting in the game as well, because why would he move to Chelsea without a guarantee of game time? I think it's one where Chelsea really, they'll eventually come good and find their way, and I think Bournemouth's a good place for them to come up against. But I think for Bournemouth, like I said, they have had tough fixtures. West Ham at home, Liverpool away, Spurs at home, Brentford away. And I think that for them, their key man is going to be Dominic Solanke. 4 matches played, 2 goals, 1 assist. I mean, the team has only scored 4 goals this season, and he's, contributed to 75% of them, either a goal or assist. So, I think Bournemouth are going to cause some troubles. They've signed a lot of fun attacking wide talent, but, they really need to start producing now. Obviously, got Harry Brooks on one side, but, the others really need to start stepping up. I think for Bournemouth, once they get Alex Scott and Tyler Adams back fit and, really reassuring them midfield alongside maybe Philip Billing, that's going to be a really robust midfield that's really going to cause a lot of issues for other teams. But so the way I've got the teams lining up is for Chelsea, I've got Sanchez, Malo Gusto. I don't think James is going to be fit just in time, and if he is, I don't think there's any need to rush him just because you've got to know European football. Get him back, playing as many games as possible. I'm going to go Axel Disasi, Silva, Colwill, and Chilwell. I'm going to carry on playing that 3 at the back, even though I've mentioned maybe you should change away from it. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to not play Conor Gallagher. I'm going to play Moises Caicedo and Enzo Fernandez in the midfield too. I'm going to have 3 up front of Sterling, Nicholas Jackson, and Cole Palmer. I would move Sterling back out to the left and Cole Palmer to the right, even though Sterling's done amazingly well on the right. I just think that on the left, Chelsea are struggling more with the injuries, like I said, to Nkunku and Chukwuemeka, that moved Sterling to the left, played Delap on the right, not Delap, Cole Palmer, sorry, on the right, and maybe then you have Noni Madueke come off the bench and do something. That would be the team I go for. And for Bournemouth, I think Neto in goal, Aarons, Zabonye, Sensei, and Kirkes at the back. With Rothwell, Christian, Billing, the midfield is what I really struggle with. I think they really need Adams and Scott to come back into the team. But the front three, I think, picked itself at the moment. I think Semenyo has done nothing wrong, doesn't deserve to be out of the side. I think Harry Brooks plays, and I think Dominic Solanke is a talisman, so he's got to play as well. I've got this game for another draw. I've got them 1-1, just because I don't think either side are really going to, put the other team to the sword in terms of going forward, and defensively, they are both a little bit suspect as well. And then the last game on Sunday, you've got Sean Dyche's Everton versus Mikel Arteta's Arsenal. And the reason why I mentioned the two managers is because obviously Sean Dyche's first game as Everton manager was against Mikel Arteta's Arsenal at Goodison Park. Everton at the moment, 4 games, only 1 point, which was a draw against Sheffield United, and 3 losses. Whereas Arsenal are on 10 points, 3 wins and 1 draw. And you could argue say, that 1 draw was unlucky because it's a fantastic strike from João Paulinho. There is a narrative going around on social media at the moment about maybe this is going to be a banana skin fixture for Arsenal, and I was trying to figure out why that was. And I know, obviously, the recent game, like we mentioned, that Arsenal lost 1-0 to Everton. But not only that, but in the last 5 meetings, Everton have won 3 and Arsenal have won 2. And I thought that was quite interesting, actually, because I know Everton have been smashed at the Emirates, but towards the back end of the last few seasons, near the end, where they've been safe from relegation. But at Goodison Park in the last 5, Everton have won 3. They've both drawn 1, and Arsenal have only won once. And that is actually not a great record for a stadium in which, you'd expect Arsenal to get a lot more points considering how they've been playing in recent seasons. So there is that bogey factor going around, and the fact it's against Sean Dyche. And, Arsenal done really well, but coming back off the international break, momentum was there, facing Man United instead of winning. And Arsenal fans are probably on cloud 9, as Toby would probably tell you. But going into Everton, I think it's going to be tough, especially with Everton now having their transfer window finished. It looks like they've got their squad more or less assembled. I think they're going to start with Jordan Pickford in goal. I think they're going with Patterson, Tarkowski, if he's fit. Obviously, he came off in the last game. Jared Brantwaite, the left centre-back, with Ashley Young at left-back. I think Sean Dyche is going to go with Garner at right mid. But I would like to see Dwight McNeil come into the side, and that maybe could be an area. But I can understand with Martinelli on the left wing or Trossard or whoever it is, that young Patterson might struggle a little bit, so it's good probably to have a more defensive player who can help him. And obviously Garner played at right back for England in the Under-21 Championship. I'm going to go midfield of Idrissa Gana Gueye and Andre Onana. Left wing, I'm going to go Arnaud Danjuma, and I'm going to Decore in front of them, just behind Beto. I think Beto is going to be Everton's crucial player. He hasn't scored a bag full of goals for Udinese before he came, but I think he's that perfect type of Sean Dyche striker, and I think there are a lot of teams, such as Nottingham Forest, West Ham, who maybe should have gone in for him. And he's going to be their target man, the backs to the wall. He's going to be there trying to fight and scrap for every second ball, and he's going to be their out ball as well. Because I think with Dominic Calvert-Lewin, I don't think you can guarantee his fitness anymore. So I think this could be the striker to actually replace Dominic Calvert if he doesn't end up getting fit in the long term. And I think for Arsenal, I think they have to play Saliba and Gabriel at the back, because I think playing Ben White might be a bit of a mistake against a striker who's going to be so physical. And I think if Ben White were to play centre back, I think Better would end up going towards his side a bit more. So for Arsenal, I would go Ramsdale. I'll play Ben White at right back. Partey is out, obviously injured now, but I don't think the experiment of him playing at right back was working. So I think he needs to be playing Ben White at right back anyway. I think that's Arsenal's best team when he's there. Saliba and Gabriel at the back. Zinchenko at left back. Midfield three of Odegaard, Rice and Vieira. I'm actually going to drop Kai Havertz to the bench. I think he's coming for a lot of criticism lately, and I think some of it rightly so, because he has been poor, but some of it completely unfairly, just because of the fact that if he's, people need one player to have a go at, and I think at the moment it's Kai Havertz for Arsenal, because ultimately he has been underperforming his performances. He has come in from Chelsea for a massive price tag, but I think it's on the manager for continually starting him that he's got to the situation where now, like, even Arsenal fans are getting on his back, which is sad to see, really. But I just think take him out of the fire line, bring in Fabio Vieira. He's got 2 assists in 49 minutes of football so far in the league. Why not? He's done nothing wrong, and he looked really exciting when he's come on. So I think he deserves a start in the midfield. And up front, I would go Saka, Gabby Jesus, and Martinelli. Obviously, there are shouts for Trossard and Nketiah, and we'll see what happens with Mikel Arteta's starting 11 choices, especially with European football now starting. How much he can rotate the squad. He's got a depth of options, and he's going to be really good. But I think for this one, because of the poor record that Arsenal have had at Everton, where I think it's the best of the go full strength, drop Havertz, go for Vieira, and I think this is one where Arsenal are going to win, and they're going to win 4-1. I hope you're happy with that prediction, Tobes. And then the last fixture of the game week on the Monday night, the 7:45 kickoff, it is Nottingham Forest versus Burnley. Nottingham Forest have played 4 games, won twice, lost twice. Burnley, on the other hand, have only played 3 games and 3 losses, bottom of the league. Let's start with Nottingham Forest because in the first game they lost 2-1 to Arsenal. In the second game they won 2-1 to Sheffield United. And the third game they lost 3-2 to Man United. And the fourth game they won 1-0 to Chelsea. And the Arsenal and Man United game, to lose those games is completely fine. But to be in those games as well as they have, I think was really impressive. Arsenal, you could say, fine, maybe they weren't in the game, but they didn't let Arsenal run away with it. And Man United going 2-0 up, you could argue, matter of perspective, that they should have maybe won it considering the fact they went 2-0 up, but maybe so early on. For me, I think Nottingham Forest have done really well so far this season. I think Taiwo Awoniyi has been excellent. It's going to be interesting to see how much of a miss Brennan Johnson is going to be. I think there's maybe an argument that, they've already signed his replacements with Anthony Elanga and Callum Hudson-Odoi. But he is going to be a miss because he's a quality player. He knew the way that Steve Cooper wants to play. He knows the system. He loves the club. But he is going to be a miss. And, if Taiwo Awoniyi goes down, touch wood, with an injury, that, you got Chris Wood up front. But, there isn't too many other attacking options. Like I said, Elanga, Callum Hudson-Odoi, Morgan Gibbs-White. But that side does all of a sudden then lack a really, potent front man. And we've seen with Awoniyi, some of his goals so far this season has been his blistering pace, which I didn't even know he had. The way he's been running through a midfield and defence. I think it's one where they are the better side than Burnley, but I think Burnley really need to get a win because they've lost 3-0 to Man City, lost 3-1 to Aston Villa, lost 5-2 to Spurs. They've been far too open in the way they've been played so far this season. A little bit naive, I'd say, from Vincent Kompany, which was a bit of a surprise because of the way that Burnley thrashed through the Championship last year. I think it's one where they're going to have to learn from it. They're going to have to solidify, be a bit more defensive. Obviously, that Luton game was a massive one which got rearranged, and it's turning out, it looks like it has been rearranged now, and it's going to be a massive game for both Luton and Burnley to try and get something from that game. Say hypothetically that Burnley won, and that 4 games, 3 points, there wouldn't be no relegation zone. No one would be talking about them as much as they are at the moment in time. So it's one where I think Burnley need to get the win because I don't think they can afford to lose. If they get a draw, you take that away from home. But I think Forest will probably have more quality than they do. For Forest, I've got the starting 11 as Matt Turner in goal. Back there, Bolly, Worrell, and McKenna. I've got Serge Aurier right wing back if he's fit again. Yates, Danilo, and I've got Morgan Gibbs-White in midfield with Ola Anye at left wing back because I want to see Elanga starting next side, Taiwo Awoniyi up front in the Brennan Johnson role because I think he's been so good off the bench so far this season that I think he deserves a start. And with Brennan Johnson gone, someone's got to fill his shoes. You could arguably play Mangala in midfield and maybe more Gibbs-White up front, which they did against Chelsea. But I just think at home, you're playing Burnley, maybe go for it a bit more, I'd like to see. But obviously, you can completely understand it if Steve Cooper decides not to go for it. For Burnley, I think they need to make a few changes to the side. I would like to see Muric come back into goal. I don't think necessarily that James Trafford has done anything bad whatsoever, but I just think that so much of Burnley's play last year was playing out from the back, and Trafford is okay doing it, but he's not as good as Muric was. So just like to return some of the more established players from the Championship who helped the team come up to the league. Give them a chance and drop them only if they deserve to. But if you play James Trafford, I don't think it's the end of the world either. And right back, I think you would play Roberts at right back, play right back or right back. They have had issues at left back, but I think you need to just bring in Charlie Taylor. Obviously, the club tried to sign Ian Matson on deadline day. Didn't quite work out, but it is what it is. You have at least until January 1st now. You're playing with no Ian Matson and no left back that Vince Company wants. So just play Charlie Taylor, who's the out and out left back. In centre back, I've got Bayer and O'Shea. I've got Brownhill coming back into the side to make a midfield three alongside Cullen and Berg. I think Josh Brownhill was so pivotal for Burnley last year, winning so many accolades as a result because of the fact that he was dropping in deep, picking the ball off the centre backs and spraying the passes. So I think with the midfield three, they may be a bit more solidified in that midfield, and that would help Burnley going forward as well. And I've got Goodmanson on the right, Khalil Shah on the left, and I've got Foster up front. I would play with only one striker. I just think this is the fact that Burnley need to be a bit smarter in the way they play. I think the company will have taken this time to reflect and learn. And I just think, I think Burnley should be fine, but will they be fine is another issue. And if they continue going this losing streak, it could be a bit of an issue. I've actually got this game as a 1-0 win to Nottingham Forest. Because I don't think Vincent Kompany is going to make the changes that I think he should. I don't think he's going to shore up that defence and midfield to maybe be a bit more pragmatic. And I think it's going to come to the detriment of Burnley. Sorry to say. But I think Burnley, similar to Luton, have got some good upcoming fixtures, so they really need to capitalise on them as well. And that is it. That is all 10 fixtures in the Premier League done and dusted for Gameweek 5. Let me know what you guys think of my predictions and my previews. Do I think I got them right? Have I got some outrageous shouts? I know I got a couple. But I think, may as well have a bit of fun with it as well. So thank you everyone for listening. Hope you enjoyed just listening to my voice rambling on. Like I said, next week it'll be me and Toby back in the usual setup. So you'll have both of us to listen to back to normal. If you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe. If you're listening to us on Spotify, please give us 5 stars. And we hope to see you in the next one.